Was the electronic thing? Signature thing?
Well, I voted like it. So signature forms.
Yeah, so did we.
I was working on my vote.
Oh, really? I didn't ask you.
How are you with the questions? You're doing the order. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. I'm Tom Kleiner. I live in Spark Hill, so I don't have a dog in this fight, but I'm honored to be here because those of us who live in Spark Hill have a special affection for the village of Piermont. And just by way of introduction, for those who don't know me, I was the town supervisor in Orangetown from 1996 to 2009, and I work now at the Westchester Putnam Workforce Development Board under County Executive Ken Jenkins in Westchester. And I was the law chair for the Rockland County Democratic Party until they kicked me off when we collectively lost a particular internal battle. But that's a subject for another day. Come to one of our Democratic meetings and you can get updated on that. But one other thing, since this is a Democratic meeting for the Democratic primary, for those who haven't signed the independent petition for Michael Parietti is an independent candidate running for county executive. There's no Democrat running this year against incumbent Ed Day, the Republican. And Tiffany Morrison, who hopefully will be here to say hello, is the Democratic candidate for one of the two spots on the town board in Orangetown, which is a 5-0 Republican board right now. And she also is on this petition to get an independent line so that people have another place to land if they don't wish to vote for one of the major parties. So, can you come up? Barbara has circulated these as well, I believe. Margaret? No? There's still time. So for this gathering, this is a small, rather intimate village with not like any local community with not inconsequential actions that affect it. So there may be pointed and heated discussion, but we'll, obviously try to keep it civil. Unlike a Mike Lawler town hall meeting, if there's a reason for any of you to get carried out, it's not worth it. There's no TV cameras, you're not gonna get any really great social posts about that. So we would ask you to refrain from any unruly behavior because these nice people have taken upon themselves to put themselves forward for what is really an important office in this small village. So, and just the last housekeeping notes, thanks to Barbara and Margaret and the others who have set this up. Candidates will have 3 minutes to share their bio and why they want to be trustee, mayor, or judge. When we get to the questions, you can, if you don't mind, come up to the mic so everybody can hear you. That's for 1 minute. And then each candidate will have 2 minutes. You can direct your candidate, preferably to all who are running, but that is to your discretion. And then there'll be 1 minute per candidate for rebuttal after the candidates have answered that initial 2 minute question, and then there'll be a 3 minute close for those who wish to take it. I think we have a timekeeper. We're not going to, certainly finish a sentence or your thought, but we want to try to actually get done by 8:45 in case people want to vote. So with that, I'm going to recognize Nate Mitchell, who is the incumbent, who is, I should say, the unopposed candidate for village mayor for his opening remarks.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you to the Democratic Committee for putting this together tonight. So my name is Nathan Mitchell, and I grew up in Piermont. This is my hometown. I remember trains blocking Main Street to make deliveries to the factory, and later using the Shutter factory as a playground. I also remember the banning of commercial fishing and the impacts these factors had on Piermont's economy, and I marvel at our reinvention as a scenic veteran community and tourism destination. I also understand that these and environmental changes bring new challenges that require us to evolve. Piermont needs visionary leadership that can engage and bring our community together to address the pressing economic, environmental, and social challenges we face today, and forge a sustainable path into the future. With your support, I can work to ensure priorities in quality of life, public safety, transparency, and the environment have an advocate in Village Hall. I've served on the Piermont Board of Trustees since 2018 and previously on the Planning Board from 2013. As trustee, I've served as liaison to our Planning Board, Zoning Board, Building Department, Fire Department, Department of Public Works, and Parks Commission. I've also served as the chair of our Comprehensive Plan Committee and liaison to the Rockland County Hazard Mitigation Plan Update Committee. I've also been a member of our fire department for over 15 years and served as director and previously as dock lieutenant. As a member of our civic association, I created our COVID food pantry program and helped manage our summer concert series operations. If you've experienced flooding events, you probably know me already as one of the volunteers trying to help. I serve as the chair of the Waterfront Resiliency Commission, in which capacity I've worked to obtain our Climate Smart Communities and Clean Energy Communities certifications. Under my leadership, PWRC successfully secured funding for our first ever comprehensive zoning plan, for which we were recognized with the Riverkeeper Wavemaker Award in 2023. As chair, I've worked to develop a municipal greenhouse gas inventory and climate action plan, as well as a community greenhouse gas inventory, and worked on the Sparkhill Watershed Assessment Project. Our end-to-end notification system has been recognized as an innovative approach to emergency communication by the Flood Resilience Network. Significant investments in infrastructure that will require the assistance of state, federal, and non-government organization sources will be critical to Piermont's future and must be pursued with both urgency and agency. My extensive work with our grant writer and participation in county, state, and federal hazard mitigation programs have opened up new funding opportunities and secured the village substantial financial support already, with more on the horizon. In addition to my experience working on both sea level rise land use planning and emergency management, and the relationships that I've cultivated along that journey, I believe that I offer the characteristics of honesty, tenacity, and empathy to help guide our community. Quality of life, public safety, and the environment, both natural and built, are top priorities for me. Planning and implementing adaptations to future conditions and developing innovative approaches to resiliency are at the core of my commitment to community leadership. Community engagement and government transparency are essential to navigating these challenges, and I will give them the attention and resources they require. I'm running for mayor so that I may have a larger impact on this important work for my hometown, Piermont. I believe that my qualifications uniquely position me as an asset to the village, so I'm asking for your support in the upcoming election. If you share these values and priorities for our community, get involved. Register by June 14th to participate in the June Democratic primary, and tell your friends why you're supporting my candidacy, and use your vote as your voice. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. Since we're on the mayor category, I want to recognize Mayor Dennis Hardy, who has joined us as well. It was nice to see that. Who else? Oh, Mayor Sanders. I beg your pardon. Even more recent saying, I get it.
Opt for both.
And we're going to proceed down the line. So there's two trustee spots. There are three candidates. The first to speak now is Jeff Gordon.
I want to thank everybody for coming, and I want to share a little bit about myself and why I wanted to run for trustee. A little bit of background. I'm the father of 2 adult sons, and I have been a resident of Rockland for the past 10 years. I retired from my law firm in 2020, Gordon & Gordon, and it was a law firm that I founded in 1988 in New York City, involved primarily with divorce litigation. I've always had a particular keen interest in small local government. For 2 years while I was in law school, I interned at the Corporation Counsel's Office in New York City. In my 3rd year of law school, I was a founding student member of something called the Municipal Law Resource Center. And what that was a subscription-based service out of Pace Law School that would provide research services to small municipalities around the county who didn't have the resources or the staffing to provide research for whatever issues they had going on in their small local government. In 1981, I was approached by a former county executive, Edwin McCallion, to do a feasibility study and a roadmap for a small area, unincorporated area of Rye who wanted to secede and form their own government. That was in 1981. So I went to work, I prepared a feasibility study, and the roadmap which Rybrook actually followed in 1982 to become its own village, the first such village formation in over 50 years. As a result of the work I did there, I went on to work as an attorney in Plunkett and Jaffe, which at the time represented Port Chester, Irvington, Tarrytown, and Briarcliff Manor. In these roles early in my career, I became very familiar how small government should run, how they should be efficient, transparent, engaging of its residents, communicative with its citizens, responsible in its development, values sorely missing, I came to find out in Piermont for a number of years. Since my retirement, I volunteered my time as a divorce mediator for the New York State Supreme Court. For the past 7 years, I've sat on the board of directors of Legal Services NYC, which is the largest nonprofit organization providing civil legal services to the indigent of New York City. Also, for the past 6 years, I've sat on the board of the Homeowners Association of Rising Hills Estate in northern County and Stony Point, where I still have an interest in jointly owned property. I spend my entire professional career together with my volunteer endeavors in retirement in problem solving and dispute resolution, tools that are particularly invaluable at this crucial time in Piermont's history. So it's for that reason I'm running for village trustee. When I first got to the village a couple of years ago, I became involved in local government. I was surprised to see some of the things that I saw, which gave me the impetus to run.
It's the 15-second warning.
Okay. Well, we'll stop there and I'll pick it up if I can answer some questions and incorporate this. So I hope to have your vote next month in the primary.
Thank you. Okay, Kate?
Good evening, everybody. I'm sorry I'm getting over being sick, so I hope you can hear me and I hope my voice holds out. Thank you all for coming and thank you for being engaged in what goes on in our village. My name is Kate McCabe. I'm a 28-year resident of Piermont. Professionally,
Yeah, just
Oh, is it
bring
not
that,
on?
yeah, just bring it closer.
Okay, sorry. Thank you. Thank you. My name is Kate McCabe. I'm a 28-year resident of Piermont. Professionally, I serve as the Senior Vice President of Talent Solutions and Strategy for a large consulting firm where I've worked for 25 years. I manage a large team. I've focused on client delivery, revenue, and profitability for government and commercial clients across the U.S. and in the Philippines. My job is basically to solve problems and to create great experiences for our clients and our employees. Earlier in my career, I worked on large government environmental cleanup, infrastructure, and energy consulting contracts. I know that the skills I have gained in business are very applicable to serving as a trustee. I look forward to applying my analytical, interpersonal, financial abilities, creativity, and innovative spirit to work on the village board. My journey to tonight started a little over a year ago when I attended an April Planning Board meeting regarding a proposed 447-477 project. Afterwards, I spoke with my neighbors in the street, and we were all trying to understand what got us to that point without any of us knowing that this consequential change to our village downtown was being debated. I read newspaper articles and posts exhaustively. For months, I attended meetings and tried to piece together what had happened over the preceding 2 years. This culminated with my spending nearly an entire weekend combing through the village website and creating a timeline for myself of what the village had and had not shared with the public. What I discovered was alarming. It seemed that the village was intentionally not sharing information with the public and had done what it perceived to be the bare minimum to comply with the law. In summary, there have been no public notices posted to the Village of Piermont public notices page since 2021. After months of me and others in this room raising this issue at DOT meetings, the board resumed posting public notices in April of 2025. I'm also glad to say that this push for improved public communications is now included in the recently passed comprehensive plan for Piermont. As it relates to the 447 CBM, on May 9, 2022 was the first time they discussed this project at the Piermont Planning Board, and the last time that the Piermont Planning Board published an agenda or meeting minutes until August 14, 2023. There were no documents posted by the Planning Board for the period of consideration of the CBM zone. There are massive gaps in the Zoning Board documents from May 2022. Actually, what's posted there then is November 21st, 2021 zoning petition for 447-477. The gap extends until February 2025. In the BOT minutes from October 22nd, there was a recommendation by the previous village attorney that the board wait to hear from the county before scheduling a public hearing for CBM, and the next agenda item was an executive session to discuss a legal matter, and a change in the village attorney was announced at the following BOT meeting. There, I know, 15 minutes, okay. So 3 minutes is not enough time to explain everything that has happened over the last year, but many of you who are in the room tonight, like me, have been showing up for over a year, requesting changes to how our government operates and engages with the public. I believe the taxpayers of Piermont deserve better, more open, collaborative, and effective stewardship, and this is why I've chosen to run for trustee. I look forward to your questions, and thank you for coming.
And Michael Wright is an incumbent in the position.
Thank you. My name is Michael Wright. This is my 4th year as trustee in the village of Piermont. I found it a very gratifying experience and humbling. There's so much to learn as a trustee within your first year. Nobody's really going to spoon feed it to you. And it really gave me perspective on how much this group does to make sure our community runs properly. I am a Piermont resident, if you wanted to know. I live out on Gare Street. I am your neighbor. I care about Piermont like you do. I walk down these same streets. I see beautiful things and I see ugly things. And all of this board, the current board, feels the same way. They are all residents of this community. They are all your neighbors. We had a really nice affair last night at the Historical Society. I'm sure sometimes it's historical. A little mess there, I'm sorry. But what was wonderful was to see Piermont together and celebrating and laughing and drinking and eating. It was just a nice moment. And it reminds me of how special this community can be. And I'd like to see more of that. And I think good communication is very important. I've been talking for the last couple of years about how our board needs to talk to the people of this village, that we need to use the tools of GoGov and the village website, and even my favorite, which is Facebook. I don't know if you guys saw my post. I was posted on Facebook. It was really nice. It was really nice. They talked about my business and where I've lived over the last couple of years. And they sent emails to my staff in my office. And they also, what's it called? Foiled, which is our new word here. They foiled my petitions. I don't know if anybody else got foiled, but I certainly did. But anyway, we need to have a sense of community. All this nonsense has to stop immediately. This is not an evil board that's been in power. This is a bunch of good people that have put their time in week after week. You know, they volunteer. They're paid volunteers, basically, if you look at it. And every month they come back and they listen to everybody's stories and try to do the best with what they have. We're not a rich community. We don't have thousands of extra dollars. We try to make best with what we have, and they've done a really good job managing your money. We have an excess. Imagine that. We have an excess, and that excess throws off revenue, and that revenue helps pay our bills. It's a great thing. And this is because this wonderful board has been there carefully monitoring how we spend your money.
15 seconds.
I'm sorry. I got a lot to say. If you want to see me in the hallway, you talk. But I was appointed liaison to the community center, which I thought was going to be a horrible job. I absolutely love it. There's so much we can do there. Again, back to the feeling of community. That's a place that we're going to have great community affairs and activities, and hopefully help bind us together better in the future. That's what I got to say.
Mark Ruby is the unopposed town justice candidate, correct?
Yes, Tom. Yes, I am. It's a bitterly uncontested affair, as I like to say. And that's probably because nobody is stupid enough or crazy enough to want the job. No, but just kidding. A big thanks to the committee. Big thanks to you, Tom. Thank you for being here, all your years of service, as well as remaining involved. But most of all, thanks to all of you for coming out here. Although none of you stood up, I don't know, you're supposed to rise. I guess you've failed your civics class, and for that I'll either detain you or fine you. I haven't decided. No, just kidding. Just kidding. But so it's a little unusual to be in here because I call this the bench, and I'm not accustomed to sharing it with anybody. So there were some buzzwords that some of the other candidates used, like divorced and gaps and hysterical, and that's kind of how I feel because I'm the outlier here. But I say all the time, we're extremely lucky here in Piermont because we are sort of a village state, and by that I mean that we really do have all three branches of government. I'm just, head up the bastard branch, which is why I'm down here now, just kidding. But it really is a treasure to be able to have this. And I just want to say that there is really no, and I think Michael hit on this, there is no us and them. We're all Piermonters. Well, I can't say I'm just like all of you, because I'm definitely not. And you probably don't want to know what I think, and so I'm going to stay away from politics. But there are some differences. I mean, we do have the executive, which is the mayor, but at day's end, the mayor is really just another trustee. The mayor has some other powers in terms of setting an agenda for a board meeting, or God forbid, declaring a state of emergency in an emergency, but there's a lot of interplay between our executive and our legislative, which is the Board of Trustees. And I have absolutely nothing to do with them, and that is a beautiful thing. That is the separation of powers doctrine that comes down under our federal constitution, as well as the state constitution. It's critically important. And so while there is a collaborative dynamic with the board, or the various boards and the executive, I don't collaborate with anybody. I'm not, as I say, I'm not into policies or politics. The only thing that I'm concerned with is making sure that individuals get justice, one-on-one. And that's what I like. I'm not a politician. I like to have one-on-one interactions with people, and that's what I do here every other Wednesday. So that is very gratifying to me. It's sort of
15 seconds for you.
15 seconds, well, then I'll just, I won't torture you for the remainder. All right, so anyway, I thank you all very much.
I may have misread my instructions just slightly because it suggests the question should be for all candidates to answer, and as appropriate, each candidate should take or can take up to 2 minutes. So, direct them to all. Certainly, we want to get everybody who has questions the opportunity to ask them. So it doesn't have to be a full 2 minutes if you can answer it quickly. And then for those who are answering or asking questions, keep it to 1 minute. We want to hear, obviously, from the candidates. So it's questions, not statements. You know that drill. So with that, Alexis, start.
Oh, no, I had a general question.
You can come up.
No, it's not this part yet. Can you ask more than one question, was my first question.
I think probably the best way to do it is let's go through and have anybody who has a question and ask it, and then, we can go back for, if there's time for a second.
I have a question.
No, I'm sorry, Tom, would it be all right if we just asked everyone here if they had questions directed to me? Just because it's a little odd, when the politics are going on, I just kind of have to stay
Yeah.
away. I do have opinions, I do have views, but.
It is certainly possible you may be ignored for the rest of the evening. Don't take it personally,
All right.
if you do have a question for the judge, but we'll see how that goes.
I'm not weighing in on the.
Just if you could, go to the mic and just state your names.
My name is Fran Moss, and I want to really ask if there's a right-of-way that's been violated through the development that it's so controversial. I'm not weighing in on the development or its architectural design or integrity or lack of. I just want to know if a right-of-way has been closed off. You don't understand?
What do you mean by right-of-way?
Yes.
My understanding is that that's made up of two parcels that were former homes. After the gas station was knocked down, we understand there may be still gas tanks underground. And one was a service station. We don't have records going back that far to confirm or deny that. That piece of property, a good portion of it, was listed as open space in the Piermont Landing site plan. As far as it being a right-of-way, it was originally set forth on the site plan for the Piermont Landing as open space under the old plan, but it was actually open space. There's a difference we can get to later on tonight about what the comprehensive plan calls undeveloped property versus the site plan for Piermont Landing calling it open space. Unfortunately, that together with a lot of other parcels in the village were not dedicated to the village. So that's still owned by a private individual who owns other large parcels in the village. As far as I know, right-of-way really isn't an issue there. It's just a question of what's to do with that property. I mean, the CBM would have allowed it to be developed in a horrendous way, whether you deal with floor ratios or setback requirements or a whole panoply of issues that the CBM would have allowed to happen. But as far as right-of-way, I don't think there's an issue with a right-of-way over there. There may have been a right-of-way or an easement on the other end of Piermont Avenue, which is a whole completely different story when we're dealing with autos and what was done early on in the mayor's tenure, where that property was deeded over.
Yeah.
The village property.
I'm only bringing it up because so many of the arguments in Piermont Preserves was that it was denied, people were denied that right-of-way, and I just wanted to know if that was true.
I don't think there's any implied right-of-way.
Okay.
Right.
I think it's private property. It's 3 lots, as far as I understand.
Okay.
And there's no,
But there was, but like Jeff said, there was no subdivision of the larger 12-acre parcel of Piermont Landing
Okay.
to exclude that portion, which Rockland County also said when they saw the site development plan for that site. They said, we don't recognize this lot number. The back portion of this lot is included in the larger 12-acre parcel for Piermont Landing. That lot number doesn't exist.
That's what thank you.
I believe it's a little bit of a finger of that 3 parcel lot. And I believe it belongs to Phil.
Correct.
60% of the lot, according to Phil.
And what he did not do was subdivide it before this whole mess started.
Mm-hmm.
That's as I understand it.
Correct. The village would have to grant a subdivision.
Which we understand they were prepared to do had the CBM been passed, it would have been subdivided.
And the other problem is, under our current Business B, it's not as simple and clean, and it opens us up to we can get sued. So, if you have a downtown district that is not consistent in any way, the setbacks, the building structures, and then you go to govern somebody else that's trying to build on private property, they can say, where's the consistency? Why can't I do it? Why are you stopping me from doing this? And that's why we all, including Nate, voted for that because our friend, what's his name? The nice guy that helped us with the comprehensive.
Max?
Max, yes, I love Max. Max helped us figure that out ahead of time. We figured it would make good sense to have the guy that was writing the comprehensive plan help with this downtown ruling. And there was no evil involved in this. It was just an effort to try to clean up a muddy puddle. And that's all. I don't know a lot about it, but that's the little I do know.
Thank you.
Hopefully that's helpful.
Yes, thank you.
Anything else there? Okay. Mayor.
Dennis Hardy, first I want to say thank you for all putting yourselves out there to serve the village of Piermont. It's really much appreciated, and I hope I don't get a speeding ticket in Piermont, so. So this question, it leads up to what we're talking about. The proposed 447, 477 development that would have allowed 14 apartments in the proposed CBM zone, in addition to not requiring the developer to file a subdivision, and would encroach on the original Piermont Landing site plan. And that's important. It would have encroached on the original Piermont Landing site plan. And then also would have removed green space as the entrance to Piermont Landing. It's important that we enforce the codes and the laws in the village of Piermont. So, but it was the proposed CBM was declared null and void by the Rockland County Supreme Court, thankfully. So please continue to provide your views on this.
Well, you know, the first question is, you know, it's great to have the interchange back and forth. If you wanted to have it a little bit more formal, you go one to the next. But it's helpful to hear. But go ahead, Jim. And I found out something very important. There's a clock with a second hand. So when you start, if I write down where it starts, then I don't have to bother Barbara.
I'll be very quick.
All right.
One of the arguments, we met with, the mayor was decent enough to meet with a bunch of us months and months ago, and we talked about CBM, and one of the arguments was, right now, the village is a hodgepodge, and it opens up, as Michael had indicated, the possibility of lawsuits if you treat people differently, similarly situated people treated differently. You know, one of the issues I had with that, you didn't have to read the CBM or the comprehensive plan, all 400 pages of it, which I have read, to come to a realization that something doesn't quite make sense. The argument was, well, look at the kind of development that the village would open up itself to if we kept the business B rather than putting in a CBM. Well, the village has been around for 175 years, and I haven't noticed any crazy building going on in Piermont Avenue. You've got zoning codes that have been in effect for decades, and I didn't see any crazy building going on Piermont Avenue. And here we have the CBM, and the first thing proposed under this proposed CBM hadn't been enacted, and it was enacted for a very short period of time before the judge ruled it void ab initio, jurisdictionally defective. Then all of a sudden we have this, no other better word than a monstrosity that was proposed in its renderings to be built on that triangular lot. So if CBM was going to save us, something didn't quite connect there. Because we hadn't had anything like that development when we didn't have a zoning code. Then once we had a business B zoning code in the downtown, it wasn't until CBM was enacted that all of a sudden came to fruition. Or fortunately, it did not come to fruition. It was just a proposal. So, you know, the things that were touted as a reason for CBM, listen, the downtown has to be rezoned. But it has to be rezoned collaboratively with expert planners, with citizen input, and that's not what was done in this case. So hopefully it will be.
I'll just briefly add to that. Because I did spend a weekend of my life going through all the village assets to find how this all happened and make it make sense in my head. And when the public hearing happened for the CBM zone passage, at which the board passed the CBM zone, public discussion was open for 7 minutes, as documented in the Board of Trustees meeting minutes. 3 people spoke. The lawyer for the 447 developer, Dan Spitzer, the former planning board chair, who cautioned against that level of density and what that could mean for the entire downtown of this village, and a property owner who had a home on Tate who wanted the zone extended to Tate. This is the most consequential zone change in our lifetimes. When people heard about it, the room started to fill up, right? But for that public hearing, nobody knew about it. It wasn't published anywhere. It was, done with the bare minimum of, we'll put it in the newspaper and we'll pin it up outside of, Village Hall and we'll see if anybody notices and shows up. So it was clear that nobody knew what was happening. So there was a 7-minute discussion among 3 interested parties, and then the law was passed. So as Jeff said, on the next go, now that it was declared null and void, we'll do better. That's the goal. That's why we're here. We intend to do better. We want open engagement with the public. We want everybody to understand when these consequential debates are happening and to participate. So that's my perspective.
I'm trying to put my way back hat on and remember the course of events that took us here. I do remember there were several meetings open to the public on this topic, and they were poorly attended. Very few people came to them, and we were surprised. I don't know if there's a law or a rule on open space. I haven't been able to find it. I think there's a lot of people that talk about it, but I don't see anything written. And so far, nobody's been able to produce that document. This board was not trying to deceive anybody. This board thought it would be a nice idea to standardize the zoning in our downtown district. This board saw a dirt lot and had an opportunity to develop it. There had been no plans, formal plans submitted, and no artistic renderings of the structure were submitted prior to the local law being put forward. The local law also included an architectural review clause, which gave us some power to say that this was not fitting for our fair village, where the business B did not have that. But I can only tell you that there was no intent to deceive the public or hide anything. Again, we have to look at it too. So, I'm hoping that we can figure this out. I think Jeffrey is correct. Something next year will happen. We will come up with a new zoning for downtown, and hopefully it'll be one that we can all agree on is fair and right, and helps Piermont to continue to grow, does not restrict business, but also doesn't damage the character of our village. So.
You had 1 second remaining, okay.
Thank you.
Next, if you want to come up to the mic.
Did Nate want to answer that?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, David.
Okay.
Hi, Jackie White. I know that FILOP was passed a long time ago, I believe before there were so many so many restaurants and so many visitors. And I'm curious to know if you think that FILOP as it is still an effective means to raise revenue, and if you don't, what would you recommend to change?
I'll jump in on that one. So I think when fee in lieu of parking, which is what FILOP stands for, if somebody doesn't know, when that legislation was initially enacted, it was sound legislation. It had good intent, and it was established as a way that several of our restaurant businesses that are constrained by their lack of off-street parking could expand their table seating to a certain extent. I think in the last 7 years, we've gone astray with fee in lieu of parking in that we have increased our inventory of spots that we consider to be available for sale for businesses for seating from a number in the 30s to a number in the 70s right now. I think you can see the impact that that has on parking and on traffic in Piermont if you walk down the street any Saturday night or Sunday afternoon when the weather is nice. And so at this point, I think fee in lieu of parking is not good legislation because of the fact that our inventory has increased to the extent it has. I would like to see that inventory reduced in the future. I also don't think it's a substantial source of revenue for the village, and that we should explore other ways of trying to obtain some sort of revenue stream from our tourists and visitors. Okay.
And for the trustees, we can start with Kate. So, go
In terms of No, I agree with much of what Nate said. I think that we all realize that the parking constraints in this village are significant and they impact business as well as residents. There are a lot of people who come just to walk the pier and to appreciate our village and are not living here or appreciate, frequenting our local businesses. So something's got to give. And I think in terms of the scheme, whether or not it makes adequate money, I leave that to Nate. He knows much better than I do, but I think that we do have to be creative. I think I like to spend some time in Florida over the winter. They have these circuit shuttles that are kind of like a bigger golf cart kind of thing. That's like a for-hire car that can drive you around a downtown village, and you pay a tip, and they roam around town and they pick people up. I think we can be creative. There's a lot of people who live in this village. Many of you who were at the comprehensive plan meeting saw me talk about a lot of topics that were in the comprehensive plan. One of them being, is Piermont a tourist economy as opposed to being able to be supported by the residents who live here? So I think that is something we all have to take a lot of time to consider as well. What are the needs of the thousands of people who live here? And, there's a lot of people who live out on the pier. Can we give people another way to get into town to appreciate our restaurants and shops and to congregate and not have to drive their car from the end of the pier because of, mobility issues or other challenges. So I think there's a lot of ways to get creative. And I think, I think we're all looking forward to that creativity in the village. I would just like to add something to what Michael said. The Village of Piermont did have an architectural review board previously, which was disbanded under, in the last few years, which is something that the comprehensive plan also recommends resurfacing. So obviously, I think that would be a tremendous benefit to the village as well.
FELOP confuses me. I've never been able to figure it out. I think it has some good and some bad. One of my fears of restricting the amount of spots is that we may have some empty storefronts. We're not going to have shops coming in here. Shops are done, maybe a couple little boutique-y things. But our greatest chance of filling those storefronts is restaurants. And it's a clean business. And yes, it has a bad byproduct, which is the traffic it generates. So maybe in the future we can examine this. We're sort of an odd town. We don't own a lot of our parking lots. There's really, and I always say about Piermont, there's no straight lines in Piermont. Every line has a little twist to it. Just when you think you figured it out, it takes a hard left turn and goes somewhere else. So maybe we have to take a bigger look at this problem for the future, but I don't think restricting those spots is going to do good for us. I think it'll cause other problems that we haven't thought about.
Okay. With all due respect, I never saw such a large scam generate so little revenue for the village. It reminds me of The Producers, that movie with Zero Mostel, where they sell 10,000% of a play, and the play is a hit. I wish FILOP was a hit. I don't think it is. I think we're selling parking space and generating very little revenue from it. How much for each spot?
The total revenue is around $30,000 a year.
For selling spots that don't exist. I've been recording all the board meetings now for several months, and I go to all the board meetings, obviously, and I listen. And at the last board meeting, it was recommended by the Transportation Committee that we up the FILOP spaces from 76 or 73 or 79, even that number's in dispute, up to something over 200, which would have wreaked havoc in the village. And you would have had, it's supposed to be done once a year. It was already done in January. Now to do it mid-year, to only pull back, had the resolution passed to over 200 spots. Now in January, when the new constituted board is in place to come back off that 200 plus number, it would have created more problems than the $30,000 in revenue that it's worth. There's so many other ways to increase revenue in this village. We've got plenty of people sitting here and having dinner, and the restaurants are largely filled during the summer months, the spring months, and the early fall. We can charge a small tax on each diner's ticket. It's not going to dissuade people from eating in the village, and it'll be a great source of revenue. Those are one of the things to explore. We have to reinstitute the Chamber of Commerce downstairs, so we're not just viewed as a destination economy, which the county in its recommendations on the comprehensive plan wanted proof from this board, evidence that it really is just a destination location.
Hi, everyone. I'm Paul Caden, and thank you for stepping up for an almost thankless job, but thank you. So my question,
Your work on the committee.
we're all working together here. So my question is more general. If you're part of the newly constituted leadership of the village, if you think forward 3 years from that point, what will be different, if anything, in the village, both substantively and tone, and what specifically will you be doing to make that come true? And that's for everybody.
Michael's next if we're going down and around. Okay, thank you.
Well, actually, I'm going to jump in here. I can assure you that nothing will change here in the court in the next 3 years. It's like things haven't changed in court since the 1500s. No, just kidding, sorry. I was going to fall asleep if I didn't speak, so I'm sorry.
Well, that's a good question. I hope not a lot changes in Piermont. I think Piermont essentially is a great place. I think we have to fix some of the mechanics of how we all work together. I think we need to heal and collaborate more and argue less. And I'm hoping that, some of the ideas of community and participating in community activities together will help get us there. We have Colleen here today, who's with the community garden. And it's just a lovely place where people sit and talk and garden, and it's a piece of tranquility. And we have the community center, which one day soon will be a hub of activity, offering activities and different things for everybody in the community to do and bring us together. But I really I would hope that we don't change too much, but we just fix how we work together. That would be my thought.
David, I'm going to interpret your question as what do you think will change or can change with regard to village governance? One of the first things I think, and I've discussed this with my running mates, one of the first things I think we should do, because it's been a slap in the face to the village residents for a long time, is have a ceremonial fence tear down following the first board meeting of the new year. And then with the immediate paperwork to be put in place to have it torn down and removed permanently, then we can figure out what we can do with that location if it speaks to the property owners. With regard to public comment, that's already been a thorn in my side for the longest period of time. I think at one point in previous administrations, public comment meant there was a give and take between the village board members and the residents, airing their grievances and comments at board meetings. We're going to change that. It's going to be public discussion, or it's going to be called public questions and answers, so that the village residents get answers to any questions they have. There's going to be a revamping of the website. The website is terrible. It's got to be professionally updated. We put a man on the moon 50 years ago, and we have a website that has glaring holes, as Kate alluded to. And one of the reasons I got into this race, and one of the reasons I foiled, and was referred to by the mayor as the person who foiled, made 28 FOIL requests. We're going to revamp the website. It's going to be updated frequently. with all the paperwork and notices that it's required to have under open meetings law, including documents that the planning board and the zoning board are gonna need in coordination with their actions that they're gonna be taking at their board meetings. We're gonna Zoom all of the meetings. There's gonna be a link on the website that enables people who live in the village who can't get out for whatever their reasons, who could witness the meetings live.
About 10 or 15 seconds.
Okay, and we'll just upload those meetings to a government watchdog website, which is already in effect, and where currently the board meetings that I currently videotape are uploaded to for residents to view.
I'll just add to that. We, as Jeff said, we have talked about it because we've experienced a lot of these pain points in real time. I also have a real passion for accessibility in all forms, and both of my parents, at the end of their lives, ended up in wheelchairs. And the accessibility of this village is something that has struck me for a long time. The inaccessibility of much of the village, and even to the buzzer to get in the front door here at Village Hall has been broken now for years. I find those things untenable. And so that is definitely something, along with obviously being able to Zoom the meetings and being able to make the website accessible to people with, other needs as well. I think it's a very important thing, and making sure that all the documentation is there so that you can review things in preparation for attending a planning or zoning board meeting if something is going on in your neighborhood and you want to be informed and involved and engaged. So that is the tone, that is the intention, and I will say, that's the world that I live in every day professionally. I know that's the world Dave lives in every day professionally, so I think we have the skill sets as well to make all of that happen.
May I just interject, Mr. Kleiner, for one moment? I just want to say that.
You didn't use all your time at the beginning.
I reserve 15 seconds for rebuttal. Yes, thank you. No, but one of the things that I've been very happy to do is to tap into a pool of money that's called JCAP. It's the Justice Court Assistance Program, and we were awarded a grant to replace the front door at Village Hall along with the electric switch, as well as the second door, what I call the wrought iron door. So that money has actually, I think, come to the village, and then I think the village board has been working to procure the other half. So at least a little bit, the court's been able to make a contribution in that regard, and hopefully the work will be done, maybe by August 1st. That's my hope. But I too, I'm very sensitive to that, and I can't do a lot. I have a very what I think is a small budget, so not able to buy doors, but anywhere where I can pounce on sources of grant funding, I do that. So hopefully that's going to get fixed.
Michael spoke, so did you wish to?
Oh, you start? Yeah, sure. Well, so in terms of the question of 3 years out, what would be different? These are aspirational goals. I'm not going to promise all the stuff is going to get done. But in terms of what I would like to see, I would like to see safer streets in Piermont. I would like to see significant investments in increasing the capacity of our stormwater management system. I'd like to see a repaired and reopened T-dock at the end of the pier that can welcome boats that can bring tourists to town. I'd like to see a reduced carbon footprint for our community, not just in terms of village government, but also in terms of people and their individual lives. And I would, most importantly, like to see residents who feel like they're participants in the process of village governance.
Thank you. Mayor?
Good evening, and again, I extend my thanks for everybody stepping up and doing this. Well, you have little idea what you're in for. I will state that you will become the most boring reality TV show, so don't expect to be 50 people here. There will most often be 3. And to the point that the judge made, thank you for getting those grants. A lot of what you see in front here were based on Justice Court grants as well, including the pews. For safety for the Justice Court.
Well, I thank you for teaching me how to ice skate, Chris. So that's I continue to appreciate.
How's it coming? Okay.
No. Well, I need another lesson from December. sorry.
So Nate, you touched on this, and so my question is on the infrastructure. The T dock or the concrete T at the end of the pier has been deemed unsafe and it's been closed. What is our thoughts about replacing that? How much money is worth it to replace that? And in replacing it, the big question is why?
That's fair, and there are sort of challenging questions to look at, because it is not going to be an inexpensive affair to replace the dock. It's not something that we have the means of doing with our own resources. It's definitely going to be reliant on some sort of government port outlay. These days, things like that, I mean, the Office of Government Efficiency and everything, there's a lot of uncertainty about what funding programs are going to be available. There is a possibility that we are able to obtain enough funding in order to do a repair that would allow it to be reopened, but not necessarily reopened for boat traffic. My ambition would be to get it reopened for boat traffic, based on the fact that it is one of very few deep water ports on the west side of the river. So we've historically had vessels like the Clearwater come up and dock and do educational things at the end of the pier that they're unable to do right now. And there are perhaps expanded tourism opportunities also by way of having a place where boats can come and allow people to disembark and come into the village and do business in our shops. So it is a fair question. I think the easiest way to answer it is that it's worth it if we can get the money from somewhere else, but it's out of our means if we have to try to do that with the tiny village budget and capital improvements plan that we have currently.
It's unfathomable to live in Piermont and have a pier that goes out and is closed off with yellow police tape. It just doesn't register with me. So I've been speaking to Danny Godsworth, who you probably know has been very into speaking with Lawler. He would speak to Trump if he could get his attention because of the historic significance of the pier and what it meant in World War II and what it currently means to us. They were exploring, the board had resolved to grant $9,000 for a study to be done, the feasibility of whether it should be concrete, how many, whether it should be wood, the cost between the two is, I believe it's $4 or $5 million for a wooden dock, and concrete dock, which would need more maintenance, believe it or not, it's almost twice that much. So, again, what Nate has already alluded to, we can't do it on our own. We have to seek out state and government funds to repair the dock. The question is, how much money can we get, and whether it's going to be wood or whether it's going to be concrete like it is now. But it's unfathomable not to have that opened up sometime in the future, presuming we get the funds for it.
I agree with all of that. Earlier in my career, I worked on large government infrastructure projects related to energy and climate and environmental impacts. So I'm very familiar with the federal grant process and the federal proposal process. I'm still works for a federal contractor today. So I'm very happy to help contribute to all of the village's grant writing efforts. And I know Jeff has a tremendous skill set in that area too. As I'm sure Nate and Michael do too. But no, I think obviously you can't underestimate the historic nature of the Piermont Pier. We all want to preserve it. It's a huge part of Piermont's history and the history of the country. And some could say the history of Western civilization, right? Or the history certainly of the post-World War II period. So I think, we all want to do everything we can to save it, whatever efforts can be made.
I think the pier is iconic to this village. I know it was one of the first places I went to when we got here and stood out and looked at the Hudson and the land across the way. It also has special significance for me. I think my father left from those piers for World War II, and it gives me a little tingle when I think about it. I think we have to find a way to get it rebuilt. I agree this village cannot do it on its own. We need some help from the government. There has been some talk of a special person helping us out, which is wonderful. I think there'll have to be a lot of discussion about how we make it, what we make it of, how it becomes maintainable, and also how it's aesthetically pleasing, so that people can maybe go out there and sit and have a place to relax or go fishing. But I truly hope it comes back. I think it would be a shame if it didn't.
My father also lived from that pier as well.
Really?
Hi, my name's Martha Schultz. I've lived out on the landing for 32 years. I want to show you a chart. Yes, I know we've all heard it before about this issue, but this is a chart that shows all the municipal, and this is from Healthy Yards, Westchester. All the municipal entities in Westchester, towns and villages, the months of the year. In red means no gas leaf blowers. As you can see, out of 44 municipal entities in the county of Westchester, 5 have enacted full bans, no gas leaf blowers anytime. 26 have seasonal bans at different degrees, as you can see, different amounts of months of years, and one has time limits, 1 hour or something like that. That means approximately 3/4 of the municipal entities in Westchester have taken action to ban what are extraordinarily primitive, polluting, and extremely more than annoying. It's been proven that the sound level is detrimental to your health,
10 seconds.
to the environment, etc.
Try to ask a question.
The question is, what are y'all gonna do about it? Because I got shut down at the last meeting with the assertion that the Piermont police, a police force serving 8,000 households with almost zero serious crime, would be overwhelmed by complaints. And this would just destroy them, which I thought was an absurd assertion. So what do y'all wanna do?
So I'll jump in with that. When we looked at this issue most recently, this is, first of all, something that I support both from an environmental perspective and just from a quality of life perspective also. There are some things that make it challenging. Some of the objections that we heard from residents were about their rights being, alienated, that they couldn't use something that they purchased themselves to take care of their property with. And that was somewhat understandable. We also discussed with other municipalities who tried to do this, what issues they encountered. And some of those issues were legitimate enough issues to require further investigation. My suggestion at the time that we talked about this at a board meeting was that we should first create a registry of landscaping contractors. So if you hire someone as a contractor to do work in your home and they come to Charlie at the building department to get a permit, one of the things that they're asked to provide is proof that they're a licensed contractor and proof of their insurance and workers' comp insurance. Landscaping contractors aren't held to that same standard. They just come in and do the work. They don't require a permit. The village has no oversight whatsoever of who's working as a landscaping contractor in our community, what equipment they're using, if it's in a safe fashion, if they have the proper insurances, and I think that's a problem. I think it's also an opportunity for us to present if we create a registry of landscaping contractors and we require you to put your business in that registry, it gives us an opportunity to make sure your paperwork is in order. And it also gives us an opportunity for us to inform you about what our laws are that are relevant to your landscaping business. Like, for example, don't blow your leaves into the Sparkill Creek. It's something that a lot of people know as residents, but if you're a landscaper who doesn't live in the town and you're coming through and trying to get the job done quick, maybe you don't know that. It's hard to go and give somebody a fine for something like that because they didn't know. So you gotta give them a warning the first time. If we create a registry of landscaping contractors and provide them with guidance on what is and is not acceptable in the village of Piermont, I think that lays the foundation for us then subsequently creating a ban on commercial gas-powered leaf blowers, excluding residential use by owners simply for commercial purposes. And we can have a representative of each of those landscaping contractors sign a receipt acknowledging that we have given them these regulations, and that will make it enforceable.
Martha, I just want to thank you. You were the main impetus in getting the board's attention with regard to this issue. And I completely agree with you from an environmental standpoint and a quality of life standpoint. And it seemed like at one point the board was gonna vote, for a ban, that they were gonna defer enforcement for a couple of years to get people up to speed on electric versus the gas. But then it came to the board's attention, among other things, that, although I agree with Nate's position on commercial landscapers, not everybody in the village has a wherewithal or the means, or even wants to have commercial landscaper doing their work, and they're doing it themselves. And that opened up the door to a possibility of fights among adjacent landowners and landowners in the same neighborhood. And I think that was one of the reasons the board, one of the few reasons that they got away from that resolution. I think Nate's got a great idea with regard to having the commercial landscapers register, so they can be informed of what local code is. As far as what we do with individual landowners, whether we defer the enforcement, we pass a resolution, we defer the enforcement for several years, quite frankly, I don't know, because we have heard from other municipalities, it creates a problem between adjacent neighbors. They're no longer neighborly because you've got a gas blower. There are noise laws that prevent, you're aware, that prevent using any lawn item, earlier in the morning or after 8 or 6 in the evening. We could look at those as far as potentially helping in this regard. Okay.
Yeah, I agree with the idea of a registry. I think that's a great idea. I think education is important. I think, understanding that maybe there needs to be a phased period for residents who perhaps have purchased something. I think Alexis had a great suggestion at that meeting where the board was talking about enforcement being the hindrance, and she was mentioning that, with regard to recycling, that's kind of a self-police thing. You just encourage people to police themselves, and the behavior changes over time. So I think that is a good first step as well. I agree with you from a pollution standpoint and quality of life standpoint. I agree. I think it's where we should be going. It's where we should be right now, in my view.
So Marta, I was the one who told you that I had concerns about the police department.
No,
It
it's
was-
David Goswick, actually.
Well, I was sitting up here. And I did have concerns and do. It's not because our police are overworked. It's just, we don't want people coming into our village and then all of a sudden have arguments erupt over, is this legal, is it not? We thought we needed time to ponder this. We also were waiting for some rulings from New York State, who I think are gonna try to adopt a plan on a statewide level. So,
We've been waiting a long time.
what?
We could be waiting a long time.
We could be,
to bring up
but
the
I think the
states.
operative thing is we all agreed with you, we all told you we agreed with you. And we just need some time to figure it out so we do it right. We don't want more arguments in our village. So that's basically what I said.
I'd just like to say one thing. I mean, obviously, we'll start with the premise that Piermont, yes, is largely a very safe and good place to live. But I do just want to point out, again, everybody is obviously presumed innocent. So even though somebody may be charged with a crime, they stand shrouded and cloaked in the presumption of innocence. But everybody really should know that there are people charged with very, very serious crimes within our village. Felonies, we do felony arraignments, misdemeanors, and some of this stuff is quite serious. Now, I don't think anybody needs to be looking over their shoulder necessarily when they step out of Village Hall tonight, but, we do have, we most certainly do have crime here.
There, if you could each individually design a new zoning law for the triangle and for downtown generally, what would that be? What would it look like? Thank you.
I would just start out by saying that I would not endeavor to do anything like that on my own. What we need to do in this circumstance is to rely on the advice of professional planners and consultants who can help guide us in the process. We don't have any formal training in land use planning as members of the village board. There should be no expectation that we individually are experts in any of these questions.
Go ahead.
I'll just follow up.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be a legal answer. I don't need needs, bounds, setbacks. Generally, planning what would it look like?
Conceptually.
We could use the word conceptually as well.
Well, so one thing that I've been looking at over the course of the last couple of years in terms of land use planning is this concept of contextual, no, form-based planning. And form-based planning starts with the premise that what you want to do is identify those form elements in your community, in your built environment that give it its unique character. And then you want to use those as guidelines to try to make any additions to the community fit in with that same character. Now, as was mentioned by Max Stack at one of our comp plan committee review meetings, if we wanted to do something like migrate to form-based planning, it's a big project, it'll be a costly thing. It's not necessarily something that we can do right on the horizon, but I will say that there are a lot of elements in the concept of form-based planning and zoning that I like, and I like where they come from, which is let's look at what works and make more of it, look at what doesn't work and make less of it. A little oversimplified, but in layman's terms.
Thank you.
I agree with everything that Nate said in the context that he proposed. I think, like Dennis highlighted, as it relates to what is currently fenced across the street, that is 3 distinct properties. So, the owner of the back, which he has personally told me is 60% of what's fenced, which is part of the 12-acre parcel, there would need to be a proposal to subdivide that, and that would need to be something that would go before the appropriate boards and need to also get public comment, as it has been treated as open space for over 30 years. And then, as Jeff noted also, the other portion used to be a gas station, and are there buried gas tanks? Nobody knows. So there's all those things to consider as to what happens there. But like Nate said, I think we do have a built environment here in Piermont. It is a certain period built environment. We know we have other environmental constraints that are happening. And in the comprehensive plan, some of that was addressed, and also in terms of people's ability to lift their dwellings if they choose to, if they're in a flood zone. 50% of Piermont is in a flood zone. So I think all of those things have to be considered. I think, parking, obviously we know is a major issue. We know we have, a desire to move the emergency services out of the downtown flood-prone corridor sometime in the not too near future. So those are commercial properties that are also going to become available at some point in time. So I think all of those things have to be considered. I think, the business district used to extend down Piermont Avenue to Canzonas. In this latest draft, it has been cut back now to Tate. So I'm kind of unclear as to what that makes for that South Piermont Avenue corridor, what the zone is down there now, because I'm unclear. But so I think there's a lot of things to consider as we look at the zone. But as Nate said, I think the intention that we all have is to do that in a very open forum and to get great planning advice and great community input, and to stay true to what is here in Piermont, as many of our sister villages along the Hudson have done, and set great examples for us to do.
That's a great question. I'm not sure if it's the job of the board to do that. I think we have a planning board that should take the lead in it. And I think we need to have a lot of community input to make sure we do it right. This is sort of complicated. There's lots of different moving parts to this. And I think we need to have a bigger approach to solving this problem. I don't think it's going to be that simple. So I would say we have to reach out to other groups to help us.
Yeah, as Michael said, it's certainly not simple. You all know Village of Piermont is a tricky future to have to maneuver. I mean, we're facing existential threats of flooding. We're at the bottom of a mountain that causes flooding in the village. We abut the Hudson River, which causes flooding in the village. And it's not something that lay people, no matter how qualified they are on the planning and zoning board, can handle themselves. So we're gonna have to get expert people in here to face the challenges that we face, or help us with the challenges that we face with regard to not only the downtown, but for Paradise Avenue and the patch that are going to be prone to some more and more flooding as this threat continues. So we can't do it ourselves. The planning board and the zoning board vacancies, one of the things we're going to be doing is not appointing friends of the board, but all the vacancies for zoning board and planning board will be noticed. There will be an open application process, resumes will be submitted, and we'll have qualified people. We have to have an architectural review board. I understand Piermont Avenue is a hodgepodge that's been allowed to be created over the last 150 years, but there's no reason, or 175 years, but there's no reason why we can't have reconstitute an architectural review board. Every village that I ever worked for, whether it was Tarrytown or Irvington, they had their architectural review boards. That's some of the things we need to address with experts that have to be retained. For traffic, for weather, for climate, for the impending flooding that we're going to see on more and more of the village over the years. And it may not be 100 years. Alexa.
I think I'll say thank you too for, I know how much work it is to serve on the board and to run for an election, so thank you all so much for stepping up to do this. I wanted to talk about open space, which is an issue that's so important to so many people in Piermont. And when I was here at the first public meeting for the comprehensive plan, everyone was emphasizing how much they love nature and open space in Piermont, and everyone was sticking their little green dots up there about that. So I would like to know, what can we do as a village to preserve more open space as it becomes available? And specifically, what are we going to do about Flywell Park and the 11-acre Piermont Landing site? Does anyone actually know what the status of those 11 acres are? Are they currently protected in any way, shape, or form for the public, as apparently was the intention when that development was created? And if it honestly is not protected in any way, which I find hard to believe, why are we not looking for ways to make sure that it is protected and preserved, especially Flywell Park? I just can't imagine that being built upon, but it seems like that might be up for grabs whenever anyone asks. And in terms of the right-of-way, there is a public walkway that is paved and on site plans that is behind the fence. So is that not a right-of-way that is fenced off? Thank you.
Do you think, Michael, Jeff, okay?
I believe Flywell Park is owned by Phil Griffin. It's private property. So I don't know how much we can do on private property except to regulate what and if gets built there. But I still have not been able to find anything that talks about public space, green space, as a plan. If we can find that document, I think it would do us a lot of good. But I haven't seen it. So it's hard to tell a private landowner what they can or cannot do with their property.
Jeff? My understanding is that the original site plan for the landing actually had a portion of that triangular lot as open space. And I think Dennis, I saw that plan from you.
Alexis.
For the plan, was it Alexis? Yeah, it showed on the original site plan for the landing that was the intention was to keep it open space. Unfortunately, that piece of property was not deeded to the village as open space. As far as what we do with Flywheel, again, it'll be subject to whatever the zoning and building code provides currently, or as amended with a new administration, or how many years down the line. But you're right, it should have been, together with certain roads, should have been dedicated. I understand the village didn't want to take certain roads because they were too narrow. But the other way to do it is to approach, the landowner, Phil, with an offer to buy. But then again, where's the money going to be coming from? I don't think it could be a source of grant funding for open space. And, something we could explore certainly is purchasing some of the open space to maintain it and keep it as open space, but it's going to take money. He's been very generous to us by allowing us to have, the concerts and art festivals and the farmers market and all sorts of events. But we're relying on his graciousness for things that really we shouldn't have to, because the largest piece of property that's open in the village is owned by a private landowner. And we have to ask for favors. So.
I agree with all of that. I think as I understand it, there's a tax easement that Phil receives for his, generosity in letting the village use Flywheel Park and some of that land for public use. So I think that arrangement has served the village well for 30 years, but is it sustainable long-term based on zoning? Like Jeff said, all of that is up in the air. So I think we have to be thoughtful about all of these parcels of land. We have to be thoughtful about where we live, the constraints that we're under, be they economic and what's feasible, as well as climate change and what is going to be the future of these parcels. So, but I think also, is it outside of the realm of possibility that St. John's Church comes up for sale in the next decade or two, right? Churches are losing population. That's a riverfront parcel, right? That would be a very nice public space. So certainly, many villages do set aside funds or do different bond initiatives to purchase space. So down the line, those are certainly things that we could and should consider, because I agree with you, Alexis, this village really does value open space, and we don't have very much of it, right? Especially public open space.
So, I'd like to follow up on that with, I also agree that I think it's a priority and a value of most of our residents, and I would say also most of our businesses, that we preserve the open space that gives this village the character and charm that it has. In terms of the specific 11-acre RD West parcel, in my understanding, there is no easement in existence. There's no particular right-of-way in existence. The only thing keeping that static is that any change to the site would require an amendment to the approved site development plan. And so there is a site development plan that's on file. It does depict where various items were approved to be. That little area is one of the items that appears on the site development plan that was approved. Therefore, any change in the use would require going back to the planning board and requesting a site development plan amendment, and also subdivision if some parcel was going to be broken off and treated in a different way. We rely on our planning board to review that type of question and balance these factors about the character of the community, the impact on the environment, in making their determination whether or not a site development plan amendment ought to be granted. That's not strictly the purview of this board. It really is a planning board decision. If there were going to be some zoning changes that were involved in it, that would come back to this board and be discussed here. But for the most part, that is something that we are relying on the planning board to watch out for, and that's why it's important to make sure that the people on the planning board have the same values that most of us share about open space and the environment.
Hi, Kevin Timoney. I just have a quick question. We all see the Facebook posts and we see how contentious it gets. So I'd like to know what specific steps could Piermont take to ensure that local policies are administered in a way that's fair, humane, and respectable to everyone?
Local policies?
Anything that you guys deem through the village board, what you think in a humane way that we can get it done? We see these posts all the time on Facebook. We see everyone going after each other. It gets ugly. How can Piermont maintain its respectability, civility, and humanity?
Stay off of Facebook.
Go ahead.
I think it's a great question, and I don't think it's one that I can entirely answer. What I can tell you is that a lot of the frustration that I've heard from residents in the community, people who were speaking out on social media and other forums, is simply that they don't have any access to the information about what the village government is doing on a day-to-day basis, on a short-term basis, or a long-term basis. And that's frustrating. So as we've discussed previously tonight, I think it's very important that as a village government, we prioritize that transparency and that education of our residents so that they're aware of what's happening and don't need to jump to conclusions and then go down the slippery slope of accusations and assumptions.
Yeah, I agree with that. The biggest source of the acrimony, in my opinion, is a lack of transparency, a lack of notice, a failure to upload required documents to the village website, which is wholly inadequate. I understand that the meetings used to be videotaped. They stopped for whatever reason, so then I invested in professional equipment and started videotaping the meetings myself. And having a friend, because I'm a Luddite when it comes to technology, I have a friend of mine who uploads it to the internet. But I think that's a large problem. One of the reasons I got involved in politics and decided to run is because I found, as Kate alluded to, all of these glaring holes on the village website where minutes of meetings, relevant meetings that took place during one of the most relevant amendments to the zoning code in the village's history were taking place, and the minutes weren't uploaded. So, I foiled everything that should be uploaded that wasn't. I foiled and got copies of things. So I think that's the major source of the acrimony. What you're seeing on social media is just a product of the frustration that people are experiencing and not feeling that the village is looking out for them. They're not uploading things that should be easily and readily available to them, and it's not. And it's required by law, certain of these documents to be uploaded, and they're not.
And I'll just add to that, some of the delays in sharing information have even extended into 2025. There was I believe it was January of 2025, a resident just happened to see a post in the Rockland County Times newspaper, like brick and mortar paper newspaper, when was the last time you saw one of those, that Piermont was having a comprehensive plan public hearing in January. And so I waited, I looked at all the village assets, I have the app, I get the emails, all the things, looking everywhere, looking on the website, looking on the Facebook, it's not there. 2 days before the meeting, I email the village board, the mayor, Jennifer, everybody, and I say, somebody just happened to see this in the newspaper. Is this actually going on? 10 minutes later, I get an alert on the app. It's in the app. 10 minutes later, I get an email. 10 minutes later, so you're supposed to read these documents that are 300 pages long in 2 or 3 days. So I think, where we know that there were gaps during the CDM period, those gaps extended, and the government shouldn't operate that way. And then, like Jeff alluded to, public comment shouldn't just be a one-way street where people come and they ask questions and nobody responds to their questions. So I think, all of that can change. All of that is within our hands to change. And it's a choice we can all make. And I think it is a choice we should make for the future of our village. So I look forward to it.
In April, I proposed that we put our money where our mouth is and put funds towards better communication. I agree that we've done a terrible job communicating. We're still back in the 1960s with the way we get the word out to our people. So the board agreed, and we put a meager $10,000 for this year to try to either hire a person or develop our website a little. This will be a test year. We'll see if it works. We'll see how the clerk's office handles it and what media works best for our community. And then next year, hopefully, we'll put more funds to it. Our clerk's office is 3 people, 3 very busy people that work very, very hard for this community and are often here quite late at night trying to make sure everything gets done. We're not Orangetown, we're not New City, we're not anything like that. We're a small village of 25 100 people. And we don't have the resources to do all the things we want to do. And it's a balancing act. It's always a balancing act between budget and taxes and the amount of personnel we have here. And I think they've done a real good job. I like our clerk's office. I think they work very hard. I think if Jennifer ever left us, we'd close as a city, a village rather. She knows where everything is and where all the secrets are and what thing has to be filed when. So I think we're starting to wake up. We're starting to put some money towards this problem. I agree, it is a big problem and it's plagued us for a couple of years now. You should also know that the reason we publish in the hard paper newspapers is because at the beginning of the year, we state how we're going to put notices out, and one of them is the newspaper. It's not the only way.
I completely appreciate that, but the point was there was a 10-day delay between the time it was in the newspaper and any other village asset, and it was only released in the village assets after I sent an email to the mayor, the clerk, and the village board saying this is supposed to be in 2 days, is this actually happening? And suddenly there was an avalanche of contact. And the public shouldn't have to beg for information of what goes on in the village.
The public should not have to, and that's why I propose that we spend some money to start the process to do better communication. Through this whole process, it's been very painful because we haven't been able to reach out to people. We haven't had the means to do it. We've just been getting slapped around
That
here.
content was on the website for years prior. You can look at it. I'm that person. I created a 20-page timeline of a 3-year period. Jeff saw it, and I shared it with him and some other people, and I was like, this is what happened here. And I screenshotted every page of the website, all of the timelines, all of the gaps, all the things that were not there. All the stuff was there from 2017 to 2021 or 2022, and then suddenly, not there. Not there for 2022, not there for 2023, not there for part of 2024. The zoning and planning board documents were not there from 2022 to 2025. This is not a matter of we're a small village. This is not in any way, shape, or form an attack on the clerk's office. These are requirements of the law in the state of New York. This is not optional. This is how the government has to operate. So this is not a question of whether or not we want to do it. This is a question of a will to do it and how to do it. But every prior administration did it. Chris's administration did it. Every prior administration did it. This is just the way the government has to operate in the United States of America. It just is what it is.
I agree. Before Dennis goes again, is there anybody who hasn't spoken who has a question?
I do. Did you say $10,000 for a website? If that's the case, that's $9,000 too much.
It's not just for the website, it's also to hire a part-time person.
Call me.
To help him.
I work in PR. Call me.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you. You're wasting your money.
We haven't spent it.
Good.
Along those lines, I think you've all illuminated the fact that there needs to be better communication and better transparency. But what I would say, with the village sitting on almost a $2 million fund balance, to say that we're going to put $10,000 toward communication is woefully inadequate. Absolutely.
I was happy I got the 10,000.
Yeah.
And I will spend it very well, trust me.
Rob Burns, I proudly serve on the village board with Nate and with Michael for approximately 8 years. It's very heartening to see the room partially filled. Even with an election coming up, you would think that it would be standing room only. You see the same people come out. At our meetings, I can tell you who sits in this seat and that seat and that seat, and it's about 5 people. So for everybody to make excuses about what this board did in the past, you weren't here. You knew there were meetings once a month. You knew the time of the meetings. You didn't show. As far as when we got a planner to come in, the planner told us what was going to be in the final document, and he suggested that we make a change in the zoning. We made that change. Jennifer, who's been here for the longest time, excuse me, knows exactly how to send out the notices. The county said they didn't get it. We're back at square one. You spoke, Jeff, about parking, about the village square and about the parking lot D. During my term on the board, I've been actively working with Phil to try to get a transfer of both of those. You'd be surprised about the amount of money. You say it's a lot of money. Until you speak to Phil, you're not gonna know what he's been offering.
Rob, if you have a question, only this time.
Yeah, so what do you plan on doing? You don't like the feel-off, you don't like this, you don't like that. We don't have enough parking for the restaurants. People come here on a Saturday and leave. What's your answer?
Sure, I don't pretend to have an answer to that question. I think that really is one of the biggest issues that we struggle with, is that we have found a way to increase the amount of restaurant seating and the activities that go on in Piermont that attract visitors to a point that isn't supported by our current parking infrastructure or transportation infrastructure for that matter. So I think one way of looking at it is to try to balance the needs of our residents with the needs of our businesses as to what we do allow to take place in the village. I don't know that that is a perfect solution. As Mike mentioned before, there could be a trade-off between empty storefronts and parking availability. I know most of my lifetime there have been empty commercial spaces in Piermont, and it's always been an issue that we wanted to do something to fix. So I still would like to see all the storefronts in Piermont filled with some sort of activity that's bringing revenue into the community, that's bringing people into the community. But we can't ignore the simple realities of our physical environment. And if we only have a certain number of available spots for people to park in, pretending we have 20 more doesn't make any improvement in the parking situation.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, increasing the number of fill-up spots does not increase the number of spots for parking in the village, right? So, and there was a proposal made last year to turn the ball field into a parking lot, and residents came out and residents strongly opposed the idea, and so it was a non-starter. But it was something that was proposed by the village board. I personally was glad that the village turned up and that people, advocated for leaving the ball field a ball field. But, I think that we are in a certain built environment. But post-COVID, there have been some different changes, right? My whole life living in this village, everybody didn't have sidewalk seating. And it's become something now that every restaurant is looking to have, without an offset that they lose spaces inside to accommodate having sidewalk seating or, street seating. So I think all of those things have increased demands, right? And some of the retail changes that have happened in various things. We do fortunately have some booming retail businesses in town. The bike shop, expands every year. Farrah's doing phenomenally well at expanding her space as well to online. And so we have a lot of creative entrepreneurs here who have, figured out different uses for their space. But increasing just the fill-up number does not increase the number of parking spaces in the village.
Mike.
Again, fill-up is a muddy puddle, and according to those who know best, there are other spaces, not in downtown, but down the side streets. I think we have to come up with a bigger plan, because this is sort of a haphazard plan for fixing a big problem. And I don't think we want to discourage business in Piermont. I think that would give us a black eye, and I don't think it's good for the village. I personally like walking from my home in the Landing down Gare and going into town and picking a restaurant and having something to eat with my wife Noreen. And it's a pleasurable thing. So I wouldn't want to see empty storefronts, and I think that wouldn't be a good look for our village. And I think we need to really put some heavy thought into this problem and how we can resolve it artfully.
I don't don't think anyone in the room would deny that Piermont is a very unusual place for a number of reasons. The fact that it's so unusual has driven a lot of us to move here and to stay here. But it's really, its environmental issues and its proximity to the river and to the mountain is only matched by the difficulties we face with having something more than a destination economy in the downtown. And quite frankly, it's above my pay grade, and I think with a $2 million surplus, if that's being touted, the administration, whether it's the same administration or a new administration, needs to spend money and not be afraid to spend money to ensure the viability of this village in the future, both from an economic standpoint and environmental standpoint. Spend the money on experts. People far smarter than me and Kate and Michael and even Nate to possibly, sorry Nate, to solve the, you know what I think of you, to solve the problems that we're facing now and problems that we'll be facing in the future. Not so distant future.
We are at a few minutes before 9. We have one quick introduction of our town board candidate, but before that we will, unless there's anything that must be asked for the whole room, but obviously the candidates will make themselves available. So you have 3 minutes, if you wish, to exercise that to sum up. You don't have to use all 3, but the order that would have been for the next question is that Michael, Jeff, and Kate, and then Nate, and Mark, I'm sorry. And
I could donate my 3 minutes if you'd like to allocate it. I'm a lawyer, so I don't know how to divide.
yeah, we'll figure it out. Okay, Michael, go ahead.
Well, thank you all for coming tonight. I really do care for this village, and I'd like to see good things happen here. I believe communication is one of our largest issues, as you can tell by tonight's conversation. And again, I hope that if we can improve upon that, there'll be less hard feelings, and we can get back to acting as a wonderful community that we are. I really have put a lot of effort into this village. The sound system you're listening to, the projection system, are all things I've donated and installed myself. My work at the community center is tireless, and I love it. I think it's really going to be a jewel, and I think with the library and other programs, I think to be the heart and soul of this village, we can have some very interesting lecture series and music and cultural affairs and art exhibitions up at the community center. And we're installing a brand new playground, which you'll see in June. I think it's going to be really a beautiful thing. I think it's long needed. Dan Sherman has worked very hard to make that happen. And we're going to have a little scenic overlook where you can sit on a bench and look at the Hudson and think your thoughts in peace. So I think all these things, community centers, community gardens, are really good for our heart and soul. And we need to water the flowers and make them grow. And those are my thoughts.
Next.
The village of Piermont is at a crossroads. I'm committed to ensuring that our village takes the right path forward towards a responsible and sustainable future. Piermont deserves transparent leadership, responsible governance, and a clear vision for the future. Towards that end, I would work towards promoting fiscal responsibility to ensure that your tax dollars are spent wisely. In addition, enhancing public safety is very important, and I would do that by supporting our first responders with the tools and resources that they need in addition to improving community-based programs. Responsible development, which as you can see has been a big issue the past year and a half, while preserving the character and charm of our village. Progress and tradition can and should go hand in hand. Also important, as you've seen, and the source of great acrimony on Facebook, as some of those previously mentioned, improving communication between the village government and the residents by bringing a greater level of transparency to the village matters and village governance. Saving our peer by working to pursue grants at the state and federal levels, and by working with those in our village who can get the job done. And last, not least of which, is exploring innovative flood remediation methods by working closely with the Waterfront Resiliency Commission, which you know Nate has been intimately involved with, in addition to local, state, and federal agencies. The election is not about politics. The election is about our home and making sure our village remains a place where families thrive, businesses flourish, and neighbors support one another. I can't do it alone. I need your voice, your ideas, and your support to make these changes happen. Together, a mutual stewardship can effectively tackle issues of the past, present, and those we will be facing in the future. I hope I can count on you for your vote. Thank you.
I concur with everything that has been said tonight about our wonderful village. And I so appreciate everybody coming out. I appreciate the enthusiasm that people have shown about, what's going on in the village in terms of the comprehensive plan, in terms of, coming out and speaking up at village meetings and planning board and zoning board meetings. I appreciate the transparency that Jeff has created with videotaping these meetings, and I think we have a tremendous opportunity in this village. This is a very special place. We all live here because we've chosen to. This is our chosen home, whether we were born here or whether we moved here decades ago or months ago. And I think we're at a precipice, really. Climate change is around the corner for us here. We're going to feel it probably before a lot of other places in Rockland County do, and we have to be thoughtful about that. We know that our village downtown, we have to come up with a plan for the future, not only as it relates to the vulnerability of climate change for 50% of the village, including the Patch and Paradise and our downtown regions, and over by the library and over by the garden and all of these places. So we need to protect what is here. We need to decide what the plan can be to rebuild the pier and respect our history. And I know that we can all pull together and work together as Piermont has through every crisis and every opportunity that's presented it for centuries. So I look forward to that. So thank you for coming. Thank you for your time.
I'm actually be happy to defer my time to Tiffany. I know we're running a little bit late, and I could use a bathroom break. Thank you everyone for coming, and please come out on the 24th. There are some pamphlets up here if you want some more information about me as a candidate or the other candidates. And yeah, thank you for your involvement.
Thank you so much to the candidate. And just give 2 minutes to Tiffany. Tiffany served in our my neighbor in Spark Hill who's running for the town board. It's a 5-0 Republican board. And if nothing else, we need to shake that up. And so Tiffany just wants to introduce herself, and you hear a lot more about her in the coming months.
Use Thompson.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I do have a big voice, but I still will use the mic. So I don't, yeah. So good evening, everyone. My name is Tiffany Sturdivant Morrison, and I am a candidate for the Orangetown Town Council. It is an honor and a privilege to be before you all. First of all, to all the candidates, thank you for putting yourself out there. I know what it's like because I'm here too. And just after what I've seen today with our school board elections, I'm grateful that I have the opportunity to run. I think now is the time. I will say this, there's a lot of stuff I could say, and you'll see my website hopefully in a week or so, there'll be lots of details about me. But Orangetown is home. My grandfather came here in the early 50s after World War II and lived at Camp Shanks and did not leave. All of my aunts, uncles, siblings went through South Orangetown Central School District. And when I moved away for 30 seconds to go work for Washington, D.C., for D.C. government, people forget that they actually have a government in D.C. too, outside of the national one. I said, oh no, this is not gonna work. I gotta go home. And I told my husband at the time, I said, I don't care if I have to establish residency in a cardboard box. I need to raise my children where I was raised. Because there's something unique and amazing about being here. Having the opportunity to see Pete Seeger. I didn't even know who he was when I was a kid until I saw him at Barack Obama's inauguration. I said, oh, I know him. He's my neighbor. You can't replace that. You cannot duplicate that. We are Orangetown. It is an amazing place, but we have opportunities to be more sustainable, to be more transparent, to be more diverse with our leadership. And I think of it as an honor and a privilege to serve. I don't think that this is something that people do for clout or do for fun. I do this because I love where I live, and I appreciate the fact that my son can walk the trail and I know he's safe. My son is 6'1", he's 14 years old. He's a big guy. Or he comes to the PAL and he plays basketball with Talad. Or my daughter who uses Piermont Library to do her Girl Scout meetings. So all these things mean something to me, and I am concerned, I'm not going to lie, about the rhetoric that we see not only here but across the country that tries to tear apart a fabric like this. And so I believe that local is impactful, and yes, we are concerned about what happens in the White House, but as we see tonight, we're concerned about what happens in this house. And so I believe that it's really important to be engaged and to stand up for something that you believe in, and that's why I'm here. So I'll be around to answer any questions that you have, or any concerns that you have, because I know I have my own. Sustainability and responsibility are two major things. I'm also the assistant pastor of St. Charles Amy Zion Church in Sparkle, New York, so the creek is right there. And I know there's been times where it's flooded, because the church flooded back in the 90s. I don't know if people remember that. Our whole entire sanctuary had to be replaced. And then there's times when the water table is so low that you barely have a creek. And so I am concerned about the same things that you are concerned about, because I only live in Spark Hill too. I can walk here. So again, thank you for your time. Thank you for coming out. And I pray that we encourage people to be engaged. It's on both sides of the fence, right? So we want our elected officials to be engaged and to hear our concerns. But then when we're in midterm season, people don't come out to vote. I just voted in the school board elections and only 471 people voted at Tappan Zee Elementary School. See, I'm dating myself because that's where I went. I still remember the song. If you guys want to hear it, I know the song. TZE. Yes, it was great. And we had Jack Hanna with a condor and a boa constrictor. All the teachers ran. It was a great time in kindergarten. But I digress. That's a concern too. So as much as we want to hold our elected officials and those of us that want to run for office accountable, we need to figure out how we hold each other accountable to come out. You get what you vote for, and I'm concerned that folks are not voting. They think their vote doesn't matter. They think their voice doesn't matter. I'm hoping I can stand in the gap and let them know that it does, especially in a season like this. So again, I thank you. If you have any questions, please come. You know where to find me, some of you, or you'll find me walking around and chasing my children and making sure they come home. So thank you and have a good night.
Again, who hasn't signed Tiffany's petition, come on up. And again, more round of applause for these nice people.